And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here and around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining today. Today is March 4th, 2022. So we're practically 2 years removed from when the pandemic started, the lockdowns that happened worldwide. Hopefully, we're all past it or getting through it as many would experience. Anyway, so in this week's episode, we'll be talking a lot of things that's been happening worldwide, globally. How does this affect the businesses and what's to be done about it? And will this continue in the short term or in the long run? Here, obviously, companies or businesses are still having difficulties, recovering, or some are taking advantage, or they're doing really well. So we'll take a deep dive into those many aspects. So first we'll be talking about is which one was it? Yes, regarding Apple's rumor to plan of offering a folding display similar to how Samsung has offered the Z Fold folding screen, but in this case it's a 20-inch folding display, so more of a tablet of sorts or a monitor of sorts. So what does this warrant the makings of this product, or does it make sense in terms of usage? Obviously, for the ecosystem in Apple, if you're owning a product, it would make sense depending on your use case here. On a related subject regarding Apple, regarding the war that's happening in Russia and in Ukraine, Apple has been dragged in terms of a request by the prime minister or president of Ukraine regarding stopping the app store usage in Russia here. So we'll take a look at that. And along the same lines, along Europe, even before the war, the issue of what can businesses do to survive in terms of the difficulty of the travel restrictions, so to speak. Now Europe is making plans to ease travel restrictions, obviously to make it easier for people to travel and for business to take advantage. But is it too soon, or is it just the right time? So we'll talk about that. And over in the Americas region, in New York City, they're lifting the vaccine mandate now. Is this good news, or is it too premature, as mentioned in our previous article that we'll be talking also? So obviously, it's not just individuals' lives, but work in per se. I think we were discussing regarding NBA star player Kyrie Irving, not being able to play in his home team. But the interesting part, which is kind of counterintuitive, other people who is not vaccinated are allowed to work or play in New York. But if you're for the home team, if you work or reside in New York, you're not allowed to play, which is kind of confusing. It's either you allow them or don't allow them. But we'll talk about that. And lastly, something I'm looking forward to, hopefully you can have access here sometime later this year, is the Steam Deck. So it has already arrived, and the reviews are looking promising. So I'm really excited to be able to see if the product that Valve has advertised is as advertised, and will it be able to supplement, replace what the Nintendo Switch is offering here. So stay tuned for the last part here. Anyway, so to start off, as mentioned, Apple obviously has been the dominant market in terms of technology and offering, smartphone devices, tablets, laptops, as well as even desktop for work purposes, right? Now, according here, TheVerge.com, Apple is reportedly working on a device with a 20-inch, not just a 20-inch display, but a folding display. Now, does this make sense for Apple to to offer this uh, folding screen here? So let's see here. Where was it? There you go. So it mentions here, according to the article, it's still years away now, similar to their plans of global domination of offering the first ever car, Apple car, which is even more daunting task because obviously being in the manufacturing or in the automotive industry is no small feat. Look at the companies like Toyota, Ford, and GM, and the like. Uh, and let's see here. So Apple may be working on a device with a 20-inch foldable display, which Apple tracker Mark Gurman described as an iPad MacBook hybrid. Now, obviously, if you're going to offer a foldable display, it better have pack a punch in terms of its processor and capability. Otherwise, if your smartphone is good enough for you, then why shelve it? And obviously, for a tablet, it's a sort of in between. It's not a phone, it's not a desktop. So it has its uses depending on the users, how they use it. Now, offering this foldable display, it's akin to what Samsung is offering with their Galaxy Z Fold smartphone device. Now, obviously, but that's a smaller footprint. A tablet size of 5-6 inch screen, and then you fold it to a typical regular smartphone form factor here. Anyway, Gurman mentions that the device will feature a dual screen display that omits physical keyboard and trackpad. Now, will this make sense? Now, obviously, we've gotten accustomed of using our smartphone for the tactileness is not the same. Obviously, when you're using a keyboard, when you're typing, but it is what it is for technology. Make it more easier per se and more aesthetically pleasing here. It mentions here navigating and typing on the device will be entirely touchscreen based. I don't know how smooth would that experience be. Obviously, the tactileness will be key in the experience itself. Even I, using smartphone device, still have a difficult time. Obviously, the screen is not that big, especially if it's in a horizontal mode. And if you use your fingers, if you have very big thumbs or fingers, it's difficult to press the right keys all the time. And it mentions here in terms of potential release date, the prediction is 4 or 5 years away. So it's also rumored that the Apple car will be launched around the same time. Now, obviously, is there demand for such product? Heck, they created the Apple AirTags, and there's a big demand for that. Whether that's considered ethical or not, that's a different discussion altogether. But in terms of offering a different variety of what Apple has been offering currently, makes sense to change it up because of the current landscape in terms of the iPad. I mean, think of what Microsoft Surface laptop books, a tablet that can be used as a laptop here. It's difficult to find the right mix because if you try to do both, why not just buy a laptop per se? I mean, there are a lot of laptops that are very ultra portable and very powerful in fact. But for a tablet, it's not as strong as a comparable to a desktop or even a laptop device here. But we'll see here if people will be interested to buy their product as long as they have something to offer here. Now, will it be more for enthusiast usage, for casual users, or for more video, creating video content here? We'll see. Anyway, next is along the same lines. We were talking about how the worldwide war between Russia invading Ukraine has caused a lot of tension, and obviously this has impacted the many lives of the peoples in those both in Ukraine in particular. But the key question here: how will this affect the businesses here? And obviously, for Russia, a lot of countries are looking here and putting sanctions and restricting or even revoking even sports teams that Russia has because of what has transpired. Now, speaking, the Apple intervention here. Now, Ukraine is mentioned here according to techspot.com that the Ukraine urges Tim Cook to block the Apple App Store in Russia. So, The company has been facing mounting pressure to restrict Russians' access to their services, as obviously to condemn what has transpired here. Now, obviously, if you're Facebook, if you're Apple here, obviously you want to be careful here. You don't want to play favorites here or either sides, because obviously there can be ramifications moving forward, and once this has subsided or has ended, hopefully sooner rather than later. But regardless, if Tim Cook or Apple were to side with Ukraine, obviously Apple is doing business in Russia and could have significant impact in their business and bottom line immediately in the short run or in the long run. On the other hand, if Tim Cook were to side with Russia and do nothing about it, the rest of the world will look at Apple as to what type of company, what type of culture or responsibility do they have as a global company, a multi-billion company at that here. Anyway, let's take a closer look here. So it matches it in response to Russia's full-scale invasion earlier this week. Ukraine's Vice Prime Minister asked Apple CEO Tim Cook to halt device sales and block App Store in Russia. Now, Apple has not publicly commented on the request. There are increasing calls for tech companies to restrict Russian access to their products and services. Now, obviously, this is to coerce or to force Russia to stop what they're doing. Obviously, this is inhumane for whatever reasons that they're attacking another country, their neighboring country, which is Ukraine here. And obviously, for a business standpoint, war is never good for any business unless you're in the business of selling firearms here. So it mentions here, following a barrage of economic and financial sanctions from several countries, Ukraine has now called on private sector to do its part, starting with tech giant Apple here. It mentions here, there was a tweet included a letter addressed directly to Tim Cook from the Ukrainian government, and it says, "We need your support in 2022. Modern technology is perhaps the best answer to the tanks, multiple rocket launchers, and missiles." He further emphasizes that the sanctions will motivate youth active population of Russia to proactively stop the disgraceful military aggression. Now, I think that's a better route rather than fighting fire with fire, so to speak, and obviously putting pressures in several fronts, not just in the governments themselves, but the business sector itself. Obviously, they want to protect their interests, and if it's their best interest to stop the war, then it would go all the way to the top here. Now, how fast can that occur? Only time can tell. It also mentions the request highlights the prominent role of technology and internet play in the Ukrainian conflict. So the military battles being fought on the ground, the two nations are advancing blows in cyberspace as well. So obviously, it's going to play a prominent role here, but one interesting fact here, as mentioned here, how this can affect the business for Apple here. If we were to take a closer look here, it mentions here in Q3 of last year, IDC reported that iPhones were the third most popular phone brand among Russia, even if it's not big, but still 50% of the market here. So trailing only behind Samsung's 34% and Xiaomi's 26%. So if, let's say, Russia were to suddenly block or blacklisted Apple, then 15% of their sales that they generate in Russia would be up in smoke, which is obviously, if you're the CEO, it's not a good thing to let it happen. So how you play balance the role of protecting the interest of the company, but also your moral responsibility, not just to the company, but to the rest of the world where consumers buy your products here. So that's a major dilemma here that Apple has to really consider carefully here. Now, Apple has not responded to the tweet as mentioned, and Tim Cook tweeted on and mentioned that he is deeply concerned with the situation in Ukraine. He should be, because obviously this affects his business as well here. Not just his business, but many businesses as well here. Hopefully, it can be settled sooner rather than later, and we can move past this, because obviously war is never good for any side, regardless of whatever provocations or rationale that they have here. As past wars have indicated, it only becomes worse because lives are at stake. I think as a society, we're not meant to fight each other or even kill each other. I mean, that's somewhat unnatural and unhumane here. Anyway, sticking with along the same lines, with what's happening with the global issues, obviously the war that's happening right now, but still, we're still facing the pandemic that's still ongoing. I mean, it's subsiding, but it's not yet totally gone. So we still have to be cautious whether it is it totally safe or is it just hovering on the surface here, so to speak. Anyway, for European countries, they have deemed that the scenario or the situation is not that dire anymore compared to a year or two before. So according here at CNBC.com, Europe's travel rules are dropping as fast as its COVID cases. Now, obviously, dropping of cases is a good indication as long as you get accurate data here. If it's inaccurate, then that can be misleading. And, obviously the curve, if it's going down, then eventually it will spike up again, which is, it's a dangerous cycle if it keeps on going up and down. And, the businesses has a difficult time adjusting or coping as it is already here. Anyway, it mentions further, travel restrictions are quickly disappearing in Europe in particular, with the announcement as mentioned. So changes to eliminate COVID-related travel rules gained momentum in early January, even as the wave of Omicron-related infections engulfed the continent. Now it mentions, but parts of Europe didn't wait to act. So citing high vaccination rates and mildness of Omicron infections, nations moved to drop the rules. So obviously, the virus is still out there. It's already morphed into a different one, from the coronavirus to the Delta virus, all the way now to the Omicron variant here. But the key here is, obviously, it doesn't guarantee 100% protect individuals here, but it's better than nothing, right? So the key here is, the government has to weigh the pros and cons of, do we let the business resume their activities, or do we limit their activities here, because obviously you're trying to balance the safety of the individuals as well as the welfare of the businesses, which provide support for the economy here. So it mentions here, because of that easing, the testing may be ending here. So United Kingdom and Switzerland has already announced they were scrapping pre-departure COVID tests for vaccination travels. And then other European countries shortened self-isolation period and drop color-coded country travel restrictions. I think what's going to happen here, this is just me thinking or making it, if it makes sense, I think to make it easier for travelers here, as long as they are vaccinated, fully vaccinated, plus the booster shots, I think that should be more than enough, as long as you have the proper documents to provide from your country of origin. So once you depart in your airport or your country of origin to where you're going to your destination of your country, once you're able to support that apart from your travel documents, then you should be allowed to enter said country here. Now, whether you get infected later on because of, a lot of factors here, if you're asymptomatic or not, that's a different situation here. But still, I think once we have, the herd immunity concept here, I think that benefits us in the future, so that, we can live with, COVID now as we move forward, meaning the new normal that we're going to experience moving forward here. It mentions here that the European Council recommended members nation open more broadly to travelers from outside of the EU as well, with the caveat that they be vaccinated or have recently recovered. Now, I think the vaccination mandate, I think, is a common sense. So at least it gives more confidence for travelers or even people, businesses to open shop. Obviously, you still wear face masks for protection, but you can travel all around, in different areas in different countries already here. The recommendations did not include, however, to allow outsiders in with only negative test results. Okay. Now, this makes sense for countries, especially those with strained hospital systems, because unvaccinated people are more at risk or severe disease. According to Cyril Cohen, head of immunotherapy laboratory at Israel's Bar Ilan University. I think that's the key solution to people traveling again. The vaccination proof and the booster shots, I think, would be golden here. Now, is it a full proof that you won't get test positive again in the future? I think it's just more of managing the risk here. Instead of having a 90% risk of having severe symptoms, it will go down significantly, hopefully less than 50%, all the way to 10 or even less than that. That would be tremendous here, so that the fatalities won't be as dangerous as it were, a year or two before. It mentions here, goes on to mention vaccines are still very efficient at preventing severe disease by a factor or 10. That's what I mean. So if we are able to get the majority of the population vaccinated, I think that would contribute significantly, not just for the country, but also for the whole world as we know it. Uh, so according to rules for Europe today, many countries in Europe are dropping some mandatory testing requirements. So you have France, Finland, Lithuania, amongst others. Now, you have some nations, Greece, Portugal, Croatia, Denmark, are also relaxing vaccination requirements, though some limit this to travelers from EU or Schengen countries who test negative or have recently recovered. You even have Iceland and Norway, however, lifted nearly all COVID-related travel restrictions this month, meaning travelers need take tests or be vaccinated to enter, though some rules still apply to the Norwegian archipelago, Svalbard. You also have like Denmark. Both countries are dropping internal requirements such as mask wearing and social distancing rules and event limits. Now, I think it makes sense to be practical, still wear masks, like how Japan practices, even before the pandemic. If you're not feeling well, you wear masks to be polite, not to what do you call this, not to spread the flu if you're not feeling well, if you're coughing. And it makes even more sense to do it now, especially in their climate that they have here. And hopefully the rest would follow. I think it's just being more responsible. I think it's the best way here. And eventually, business can recover and people could start traveling again, which, I'm hoping to do sometime in the future as well here. Anyway, next is we have, so now crossing over in the Americas region here, in particular in the United States, in the state or the city of New York, according to CNBC.com, it mentions here the city, the NYC, is lifting vaccination mandates for businesses. Now, will this affect the entirety? How soon? We have to wait and see here. So it mentions here that lifting vaccination mandates obviously could be tremendous. I think we've been discussing in the case of Kyrie Irving, where he is not allowed to play in New York. But what's funny is that other players who are not vaccinated from other states who can play in the city, are allowed to play in the city, which is kind of doesn't make sense. If you're not vaccinated, you're not allowed to play, then you're not allowed to visit the city. Or if you're not vaccinated, you're allowed to play play a game in New York, then you should be allowed regardless of where you are from here. Anyway, so let's read further. So New York, the first major city, U.S. metropolis to require vaccine indoors, will lift its mandate for indoor businesses, dining and events in the coming days. Now, obviously, a lot of businesses that have indoor services, museums, parks, or even sporting events will have a difficult time, having a jam-packed arena or place here if people are required to have social distancing and all of those requirements. According to Mayor Eric Adams, mentioned that administration would end its vaccine mandate requirement by Monday, March 7th, so long as COVID-19 cases continue to trend downward. And he mentions the joints, the public officials who made similar decisions in cities such as you have Seattle and Boston's in recent weeks. And I think this goes back to what we were discussing earlier regarding the Europe easing their travel. I think if you can get majority of your population, whether it's 50, 60, 70, or even 80% of the population vaccinated, I think they should remove the restrictions already. So you just require them to wear face mask, right? For if you're not feeling well, and then you can travel, so that there's a peace of mind. I mean, it's just common courtesy for other people, and obviously this would help tremendously for the businesses who have suffered for the past year or so here. Now, he also mentions here schools will also see an indoor mask mandate lifted on the same day. Now, I don't know about that, lifting the mask indoors, because it's one thing for adults to be responsible. It's another when it's about kids, and as we all know about kids, sometimes they tend to forget. They're too focused on playing and doing other stuff, touching several things, and then they forget to cover to forget to wear their mask or remove it or whatever. And that's a different situation here. That's why, unless you can get the kids also vaccinated, which is, what they're trying to do now, is the best way to go here. Now, eventually, after some time, then we can confidently say that face mask is optional now, not a requirement anymore. It mentions here that the New York City's number continue to go down day after day, so long as the COVID indicators show a low level of risk, and we see no surprises this week. And again, it's all about the numbers here. And at the end of the day, if people are responsible enough, not be callous in terms of not wearing face masks in public gatherings, it limits the spread of the virus, even if you're asymptomatic, which is, I think, the right mindset. That's why I'm still apprehensive in contact sports, because why would you wear a mask while you're playing? So you don't see NBA players wearing masks while they're playing, so it increases the risk here. So there has to be a certain trust with individuals that they are responsible enough in their case. But even if you get infected, that you have the vaccine, so it can protect you, so that whether you're working, for leisure activities, you have that confidence that you can continue whatever you're doing or enjoy what you're doing here. Whether the question is everyone would adopt the same mentality is another issue here. So what's interesting here is there is currently no vaccine approved for children under 5 years old. Obviously, 5 years old is still way too young. So obviously, caution should be prioritized here if you're a parent here. Good thing my kids are beyond 5 years old, but still, I'm still cautious in terms of exposing them to the general public here. So, it's a waiting game of sorts here. So we'll wait and see how it pans out, even here in our country or even in abroad. And lastly, for our last topic, so something more uplifting here, something I was looking forward when this was announced last year by Valve's plan to release the portable handheld device to compete with the likes of Nintendo Switch, which I think they should be concerned, because I have a strong feeling with the way they're doing and continue a majority of sales the Nintendo has accumulated over the past few years. It's going to eat up just because of what Steam or Valve has promised to offer and has delivered. Now, is it perfect? Of course not. So here we have an article from arstechnica.com, the Steam Deck's comprehensive review. So I've seen other reviews also from Linus Tech Tips. You also have Gamers Nexus, who did a comprehensive review, and Digital Foundry. They're all very interesting. So I just chose this one to discuss and share with you. So now, take note. Now, it's not available here in the Philippines right now. So I'm hoping that it can be offered here or shipped here in our region sometime later this year, or worse, sometime early next year. But if you're traveling or going to the United States and you can get access, then good for you. Anyway, so let's dig deep here. So as I mentioned, now in terms of its outlook, it's bigger, chunkier, thicker than the Nintendo Switch here. And obviously, it needs to be bigger because it has a more powerful GPU inside. So it's more than capable of playing, the latest AAA games here. Now, obviously, you can expect 1080p resolution. But heck, it's a portable device. The fact that it can offer that, I think it's pretty remarkable, competing with the likes of Nintendo's, with your Sony console as well, your Microsoft Xbox console here. Anyway, now the pricing is, kind of expensive, but the entry level here is around, $400. But you only get, I think that's 64 gigabytes of storage, which is not enough if you play, you're heavy, hardcore gamer here that takes up, tens or hundreds of gigabytes of storage, especially if you play the game like, I don't know, Red Dead Redemption or Grand Theft Auto, to name a few. Anyway, it mentions here, when the Steam works as intended, it is easily the best Nintendo Switch PC on the market. Its processing power, as mentioned, build quality, software flexibility, and the Linux to Windows Wizardry can breathe new life into some of PC's back catalog, which is, I think, the key here. That's why it's going to outperform the Nintendo Switch very soon. Just think about it. Nintendo missed an opportunity here to capitalize on its back catalog of games, especially for their subscription base. They offer terrible games. I mean, they had a plethora of games from way back in the early 80s, 90s, all the way to the present, from the Famicom days to the N64, the Wii games, and so forth. They could have capitalized and people would have bought it. I would have bought it. But, if you own a Steam game, now, the oldest game that I play, I don't know if the SimCity Deluxe. It's a very old one. I mean, it's not too graphically demanding, but I was able to play that before, and I still play it when I downloaded the Steam app here, and you could play it, and then later on you could change it up and maybe play Red Dead Redemption or maybe play Sifu, and you could play interchangeably on the go, and that's the key here. I think it's gonna sell like hotcakes once they are able to fix the bugs here, and the chip shortage is always not helping. But I think they Valve the company, that's Steam. Valve the company has made a tremendous step in terms of competing with the likes of Nintendo here. Anyway, it mentions as a first generation hardware, the Steam Deck they mentioned looks good, feels sturdy, performs well, especially given its base price of $400. The software side of the deck is currently rough. Now, as I mentioned, it's not perfect because not all games in your Steam library will be able to be played smoothly, and even if that it's rated for the Steam Deck, it's not mentioned, so it's kind of hit or miss, so you still have to wait for some updates. If it's a software wise, I think we can bear the brunt here as long as you can play majority of the games here. So it doesn't have to be all of it in one go, because obviously it's their first foray here in building the first ever portable device here, a PC like device here. So it has Windows and Linux supports here. Let's go back. It mentions here one of the biggest caveats of this review. The DeX currently lacks the potential selling point, meaning compatibility to Windows 10. I think I agree with this one. Why not offer Windows 10? Obviously, if you offer Windows 10 compatibility, this benefits Windows, the company themselves. I think that's why they chose to pursue Linux rather than Windows base here. Valve confirmed that certain Windows drivers for the Steam Deck were not ready. That remained the case as the review mentioned here. While I had the option to dual boot Windows 10 and Linux during the review period, it didn't feel fair to do so, as without full OS support of things like CPU and GPU and audio playback. So meaning, is it perfect? Obviously that it'll never, especially if it's in its first iteration here. But the bigger question here is, did Valve deliver as they promised? And looking from the many reviews here, I think they're able to deliver in terms of hardware here. Now for the software part, so it'll take some time, because obviously they creating a Steam portable on the go for the Steam Deck. It's not the same as having a Steam app for your desktop or PC here. But I'm looking forward to be able to having that device here in our country and being able to play on the go here. Now, will I throw away my Switch? Obviously, not all games are available in this in PC. If you really like Nintendo games, then you need to have your own Nintendo Switch device here. Anyway, so I think that's about it for today's discussion. Anyway, all the topics discussed today, links in the description below. So leave your comments down below if you have any questions on today's topics, whether you agree or disagree with what we've been discussing here, or if you have anything interesting to share with us. As always, I'll see you again next week, same time, same channel here ish, unless something happens here. So come back again on next Friday for more business focused live here. As always, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.